6, an audit found the University of Connecticut overpaid some employees who took part in the sabbatical program.
Channel 3's Stephanie Simoni is joining us now from the breaking news desk with more on what the school is saying about this. Steph?
Mark and Aaron, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. This 50-page audit reveals the school overpaid 6 faculty members, and one overpayment was as high as $355,000, another $98,000. The state audit also found UConn granted sabbatical leave that was inconsistent with its bylaws. The report cites a lack of effective procedures and finds the school needs to have a better handle on its sabbatical leave program. The audit also found the school could not recoup money from 4 faculty members who did not come back to work after their sabbaticals. Now, in the audit, UConn responded saying, quote, the university agrees with this recommendation and will develop a refreshed and appropriate approval process. We reached out to the school with more questions, including whether they'll be able to recoup any or some of this money, and we have not heard back yet. Stephanie Simoni, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.